guys, well, welcome to Module 4, Writing Activities. Now, honestly speaking, like when a lot of people think about writing activities, they often think, oh, writing activities are kind of boring, it's not very fun. And while that can be true, writing activities can also be pretty useful at the same time. Anyhow, let's take a look at our introduction for Module 4. So it says here, to begin with, writing activities are often considered to be the least useful of all the skill-based activities, right? This is generally true, and this is how a lot of people think, including myself. However, right? Now, it says there is good reason for this. While reading, listening, and especially speaking in English are all considered important, especially speaking, once again, writing is often not considered to be as important. Now, while this may be true for most individuals, writing activities can be used to further practice and enhance students' understanding of vocabulary and grammar structures. And this is something that we're going to be coming back to in this module. Now, in this module, we will focus on how to actually teach writing and create writing activities. Questions that will be discussed are, what are the differences between spoken and written text? All right, so that's what we'll be looking at in Unit 1. What teaching procedure or procedures should we follow for writing activities? What tasks stimulate writing? How do we teach advanced composition for higher level students? And lastly, how do we give feedback on writing? Now, that last question is important because in the original TESOL course, we didn't really talk about that too much, but we will talk about that in Unit 5. All right, guys, so all these questions and more will be answered throughout this module. And again, while we generally do think writing activities are not terribly useful, there are some good uses for them. So I'll see you again in Unit 1. All right, everybody, so Unit 1, the difference between written and spoken discourse. So let's take a look. Now, you might think right away, like, well, why do I need to know the difference between written discourse and spoken discourse? Well, actually it is kind of important, and there are important differences between the two, right? Because our expectations will be different as a teacher. Anyhow, it says here, one of the main reasons why teaching writing is so different from teaching students how to speak is because the kind of discourse or the conversation is quite different in some very basic ways. This unit will look at these differences and what impact that should have on our teaching. All right, so let's dive into this. We've got a task here, and it says examining the differences between spoken and written discourse. So stage 1 here is listing differences. So for you guys here, after listening to this, you should pause and try to write down some answers. But it says, can you think of any of the differences between spoken and written discourse? These differences might be related to vocabulary, style, grammar, content, etc. Write down as many as you can think of. And then, of course, if you need help, take a look at box 4.1. It may help you think of some differences. Okay, so in box 4.1, we're going to look at an example of a written text and then a spoken text. Basically, the content of both are similar, but they're going to be very different. Now, you could take a look at these and get some ideas and then write down some of your answers to these questions, or you could just go ahead and write down some stuff right now. It's really up to you. But together, let's take a look at the first one in box 4.1. So box 4.1, examples of written and spoken text. Let's start with the written text, of course. And the written text is how to bake a cake. All right, not the most interesting thing to read about, but that's okay. So let's take a look. It seems like it's just instructions, right? So step 1, prepare baking pans. Step 2, allow ingredients to reach room temperature. Step 3, preheat the oven. Step 4, stir together dry ingredients. Step 5, combine the butter and sugar. Step 6, add eggs one at a time. Step 7, alternate adding dry and wet ingredients. Blah, 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 right? You guys can read through the rest here. Now, obviously, this isn't very interesting or really fun. However, if you need to bake a cake, pretty useful instructions, right? But this is going to be different from the spoken text. So let's take a look at the spoken text below. So the spoken text here, we have two people speaking with each other. I think you guys don't really need any hints here. I think you can kind of figure out what is the relationship between these two people and that kind of stuff. I don't think you need any real background information. But we've got two people, Matt and Sarah. It's a little bit weird if I read it. Well, I'm going to read this anyhow. I will try to impersonate a female voice. Forgive me if my female voice is not so good. I think when I originally created this, I was thinking about my sister and a conversation we probably had years ago when I was asking her how to bake a cake. So actually this conversation is quite realistic. And you have to imagine that I'm speaking to her on the phone, right? So we've got Matt. He says, "Hey, Sarah, you know my girlfriend's birthday is this Saturday, eh?" "Yeah, so?" "Well, I know this is kind of a pain, but could you teach me how to bake a cake?" "Oh my God, Matt, you are so whipped." Yeah, whatever. So, can you help me out or not?" Fine. First of all, do you have a mixing bowl and pans?" "A mixing what?" "Get out of here. I'm not going to help you if you clown around." All right. "Yeah, I got one. I got all the ingredients I need as well." "Okie dokie. All right, well, first take out the ingredients and make sure they reach room temperature. Then, make sure you preheat the oven, usually to around 350 degrees Fahrenheit." "Well, yeah, I already know that. Like, duh. Do you think I'm dumb or something?" "Well, you're such a jackass sometimes, so I just had to make sure." "All right, well, mix all the dry ingredients together and then put in the butter and sugar. After that, add eggs one at a time. After you've mixed everything up gently, pour it into a pan and then start baking." All right, sounds good. So, all right, guys, and that's the end. All right, so you didn't really need me to go over those examples in box 4.1, right? But those examples do show some clear differences between written text and spoken discourse. So what you guys need to do now is stop and write down as many differences as you can think of. After you're done, continue the video and you can look at some further comments.